Hello, thank you for joining me. Hang in there 1 second while we get Malkie up. Malkie, where are you? All right, waiting. In the meantime, if you're in Israel, then I hope you had a lovely Shavuot and either caught up in sleep or saw some good lectures.
Oh,
Hello,
wrong way.
Malkie,
Hold on.
joining
Hello, let me
us.
just turn this around any second now. Here
There
we
you
go.
go. Hi, how you doing?
Wow. I I'm a zombie, quite frankly. I am so glad that today's topic has you doing all the heavy lifting because
Oh, boy. Sorry.
last night I was out till I got home after 1 o'clock in the morning from my niece's wedding. My kids got home just before around 2 a.m. Yeah, my
Congratulations.
niece got married. It was the most, thank you. It was the most beautiful wedding where still all of us are like both zombie and also super
Yes.
high from from
Oh,
the experience.
wow.
So yeah, it's like,
All right.
yeah.
Well, congratulations to the young couple.
hmm
Okay.
thank you. They're really cute. They're really, really,
That's
really cute.
great. All right. Well, before we get too sucked into the weeds of
Yeah.
just chatting, um, since it looks like people actually are joining us today, uh, welcome to where'd Malky go? Tech problems. Are you back?
Okay. Say that again.
One
You
of us.
froze.
Yeah.
Okay,
One of us
we
tried.
froze for each. Okay, I you froze for me. I froze for you. What just happened? What did we just agree to?
Lord only knows. All right, well, welcome back. I'm Havva Mahler, practitioner
Okay.
of Chinese medicine, and with me is
Malkie, Rimon, and I'm a life coach. An extremely tired, very happy life
congratulations
coach.
and welcome to Thriving Sex.
Thank you. Yes, it does. Just for the record.
All right.
I knew that I would have to build my stamina up for dancing at this wedding, and I just like I started doing these dance workouts and like a little bit at a time, like 10 minute, 5 minute videos, 10 minute videos, 15-minute videos, and then last night it was just like hours of
Oh,
dancing.
that's wonderful.
And yes, I'm feeling the effects today. I'm kind of happy about it, honestly.
That's great. All right. Well, speaking of After Effects, wasn't that a cool segue? We
Yes,
are here for part two of
I'm
our
impressed.
conversation about dealing with the aftermath of a crisis and
Right.
everything that comes after the wedding, the
Mhm.
ceasefire, the illness is over, whatever the
Yeah,
case may be. So,
right. So you're saying that a crisis can also be something
yeah,
wonderful that happened. Okay, that's an interesting interpretation. Normally, when I'm thinking crisis, I'm thinking, I don't know, it's like a week to Passover and both my fridge and my dishwasher die.
I mean, that's one. On the other hand, it's my niece's wedding, and that's great. And me and my
That's
family are
not a
all going to be
crisis.
out of the house
Yeah,
until the wee hours of the morning and then have to get home safely.
yeah, yeah.
So, oh,
Okay.
goodness me. You've got spies.
What? I do. Oh my goodness. Wait a second. Aren't you supposed to be at work,
Okay,
honey? Okay.
let's not get too personal on the Instagrams. All right. So, after the crisis, if you want to
Right.
find out whatever it is we talked about last week, which I also don't remember because I am likewise a zombie, but I know it was good and probably helpful information, then you can check out
Yes.
our Instacast from last Tuesday. And today we are here to follow up on a promise, which was to talk about how the body processes emotions according to Chinese medicine. So, yes, which
Right.
is
That's all on you. Thank God.
all right.
I was just gonna
All
sit here
right,
and
you have
look
to stop
pretty.
me and
Okay.
ask questions if anything is unclear. Um, okay, so first of all,
Okay.
I'm going to be talking specifically about how the body processes really intense emotions during a crisis or after a crisis, not like every day, because honestly, that theory is a lot more esoteric and a lot more boring, and I have less experience explaining it. Um, But basically, when there is a severe shock or a very serious issue emotional issue that needs to be dealt with, the entire physical energetic system is enlisted for exactly one purpose, and that is to prevent the emotion damaging the heart. Okay, because we know, and actually, and physiologically, that severe shocks or grief can actually cause physical heart problems. There's something called, I don't remember the whole term, something cardiomyopathy, which is literally where when someone dies and then their partner's heart suddenly stops working as well, gets bigger because it's trying to compensate, but that sets off a whole list of other problems. In Chinese medicine, we say the heart, we're talking about our ability, at the emotional level, our ability to feel a connection to other people and to feel joy. Not just other people, but also like God, the universe. Our ability to feel connection at all and our ability to feel joy, we need the heart for those, as well as basically, survival. And so the idea is that if we experience a sudden shock or trauma or just some emotion that's too big to deal with, and the heart, which is the center of emotion, gets hit with it, then it can cause actual damage. And so all of the rest of the emotions get called into play to try and buffer. So the aim of all of the experiences, like the stages of grief and everything, is just to buffer the emotion enough so that when it finally hits the heart can cope with it. Okay, so usually when we suffer some sort of shock, some sort of trauma, whatever, I'm just going to keep saying shock because I don't want to. All right, so when we suffer some sort of shock, the first thing that happens is our kidneys, and when we say kidneys, we mean adrenal glands, throw up a shield made out of the energy that they control, which is the energy of fear and like primordial drives. So first thing that happens when something, I'm just going to go with, I'm sorry about this, but my mother passed away 4 years ago, and ever since then that's been my go-to. So when my mother passed away, first thing that her friends and family experienced is the body's capacity for coping with existential fear, trauma, death, and so on. It leapt into action, it put itself forward as a shield, and it got totally smashed.
What do you mean?
It's not capable of absorbing all of the energy of the incoming trauma, and so it takes what it can, and it basically collapses into itself, and you lose your ability to connect with those emotions for a while. Which is why in Judaism you're not supposed to let mourners do anything that might be dangerous, because their ability to assess danger and feel fear is gone. Or maybe it's reacting oddly. Right. It is not functioning appropriately. Since this is also all of our really, really basic DNA-driven drives, that also means that usually people's sexuality gets weird, either shut down in some cases. In some cases, people react with like wanting more sexual activity to grief, but that's also because that's part of that same system of the keeping the organism alive and keeping the DNA going that just all got crushed by the incoming wave of emotion. Mm-hmm. All right, once that happens, then our fear and all of that is down for the count. It takes time to recover. How much time depends on how big the shock was, how resilient you are in general, how resilient that specific system is, but it's usually out of play for a while. And so generally our very first or immediate response to some sort of shock is going to be fear, terror, I don't know what to do next, the world is over, life is ending, and then you're like, all right, well, the world hasn't ended, what do I do now? Which is when the other bodily systems come into play, and the two things that step up next are anger and our grief. Where anger, it's a really bad translation, but it represents the emotion of I need to do something, right? Something is wrong, something's inappropriate, something's not the way it should be, and I have to fix it. That's what I mean when I say anger. And so, again, after any sort of emotional shock or trauma, people are often like, well, we have to go out and fix this. This shouldn't be allowed. It needs to be taken care of. I need to do something. People need to do something. The government needs to do something. And they get really excited. And then because their I need to do stuff energy gets overwhelmed and it can't cope anymore because it's trying to hold the entire ball of emotion and it's too much for it, it kind of collapses and it tosses the emotional force off to the grief, where grief is about it's about our ability to recognize what's good and what's bad for us, what's valuable and what we don't need. We say, again, grief is a very poor translation because it covers a very small segment of this emotion, but basically grief is the ability to recognize the value in something you don't have anymore. Okay, so it's this emotional system. It's grief. It's gratitude. It's our ability to set boundaries. It's our.
What does our ability to set boundaries have to do with grief and gratitude? This is this is new. So far, you've been
good so far?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, well, our ability to assign value to things is essential for setting boundaries. A boundary is the active, like the action that's associated with assigning value. Okay, so it's all one system. It's the ability to say yes or no. Okay, so what you often see, even after small things, like this happened to a client of mine who had a run-in with an awful bureaucratic thing at a university, and afterwards she was like, "This is awful. This needs to be changed." And I can feel the energy draining away, and all I want to do is go sit in a puddle and cry, because we have such an overwhelming force of this needs to be done energy, but because it's not moderated, you just have the upswell, and then the wave goes away, and then the grief comes in.
Right.
And the grief, and like I said, also, when you're talking about post-trauma, post-crisis, mourning, grieving, you do end up with those periods of like, oh, the sky is so beautiful, right? Of just sitting there and being stuck in appreciating what you do have, as well as the crying and missing what you've lost. And basically those two energy systems, the grief, the anger and the grief and gratitude, are just going to try and, if they're functioning well enough, pass the emotional burden back and forth between them, and kind of let energy wear off, kind of like sand it down or have it lose momentum every time it goes back and forth, until the point where your body thinks that you're going to be able to cope with it without having a sudden heart attack, or collapsing in shock. And that's when it's going to actually hit you. That's when you're going to actually feel the true impact, and when you can start healing from it. But until your holistic oneness being thinks that you're able to cope with it, then your heart, your ability to feel connection, is going to be disconnected. It's going to get walled off, and so you're sitting there kind of like disconnected from reality, going back and forth between the anger and the grief. And then what the system that moderates your ability to change states is the earth energy. The earth energy is about taking care with the here and now and the day-to-day and what's in front of me and getting food on the table. And so when you're immediately post-shock, or when you're grieving or whatever, all of that energy that you normally spend surviving from day to day is just trying to keep the ball of emotional trauma moving, and wearing and wear it down to the point where you can cope with it, which is why you just lose your ability to do like the day-to-day living stuff.
Right. I don't know if you remember this, but after my father passed away, it was a couple of weeks later, and I could not make
Mm-hmm.
food for that day. I could make food. I was pickling things and I was fermenting things because making food for a month from now, that I could do. Making food for that day was
Mm-hmm.
virtually impossible.
Yeah.
Right. And if you told me that, okay, oh no, 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 the salad that you're making, fresh salad with like cucumbers and
I
lettuce, no, that's
saw
for
that.
next week, I could
I
make it.
saw
But if I
someone
believed
do
it was
that to
for
you.
that,
Yeah, it was
yeah,
amazing.
uh-huh,
Mhm.
yes. And it worked. It was like, okay, no, 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 but the salad is for next, and I knew they were lying. I knew that they were just hacking the system, but it worked. And, you know, and also I knew that
You were being
I
manipulated for
appreciated it
good.
even.
Yeah.
Exactly. For, you know,
Yeah.
and for my own good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why in the Jewish system, mourners aren't supposed to feed themselves or do laundry or do anything.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
but you only get a
Well,
week of that.
society also has to go on.
This is
Yeah, I
already a good few
know, but
weeks in.
it's better
Yeah.
than people lots of places get. I do appreciate that about Israeli culture,
Yeah.
that everything is set up on that understanding. Because
Yes.
yeah, I was reading
Yes.
about someone in the States who was
That's
trying to
exactly how it works.
negotiate getting 3 days off when one of their parents died because they had to travel for the funeral. And, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, here
Yep.
it's an automatic seven
I know
days.
it's
It's not even
beautiful. Is when my mom died, I'm mostly self-employed. Right now, I'm almost entirely self-employed. Usually, I have been entirely self-employed, but at the point when my mother died, I was working 1 day a week for one of the national health funds, and so it was only 1 day I didn't go into work. Actually, I think I took the next day off too. But I got paid for 7 days. I made more money that month than I'd ever made for before. It's written into the law that even if you weren't
that's
supposed to work, you get paid for the time off.
wow, okay. Okay. Interesting. It
Yeah.
all works out in
Yeah.
the end. It all
Anyway,
works out in the end.
so
Yes.
yes, back to Chinese medicine. So
Mm.
I think it's really important that people recognize this model or some model that can help them understand what's going on with them, because otherwise, I see so many people who are like
Right.
they have the drive to do things and do things and do things, and they're angry at themselves because they're not following through. They're starting to do things and then they're collapsing into a puddle and crying, or they are successfully
Mm-hmm.
doing things and taking action and doing something, and they're feeling bad that they're not grieving right because they should just be sitting and crying,
Yeah.
and recognize and everyone beats themselves up for not being on top of things. And so I think that recognizing that
Yes.
the back and forth, it's natural, it's healthy, it's essential. First of all, so that people actually don't make life even worse by attacking themselves while they're trying to deal with something, but also to plan for
Right.
the swings. Like, oh, next time I feel like doing something, this is the thing I'll do. You can once you know what's going to happen, you can work with it.
Okay. Can we bring this down to something? Because we've been talking about we've been talking about grief after death. Let's bring this down to something maybe like
Mm-hmm.
you were in a car accident and the car moderate, nothing too severe, just a moderate car accident. You're mildly, God forbid, and you're mildly injured. What would that look like?
It's the same
Like what
process.
would?
So you're gonna go through a period probably in the actual car accident of the fear and or terror, anxiety, and then your adrenal glands are gonna flood your body with adrenaline, and then after that you're gonna be in adrenal fatigue, and you're just gonna be like, I cannot cope with the concept of life or death or anything, and then you slide right into the anger and sadness, grief.
Mm-hmm. It's the other guy's fault. No, it's all my fault. And oh no,
Yep,
the car, and then of course, oh no, the
yep.
bureaucracy of all of this.
And
It's
on top of all
always.
that, or with all that, you're going to be feeling, sorry about that, you're going to be feeling slightly disconnected from reality and from the people around you and the people who want to help, because again, the heart is
Mm-hmm.
walled off. And your capacity to cope with day-to-day tasks is completely overwhelmed with trying to modulate the emotional changes that are happening.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I just took several mental leaps. So that sudden adrenaline is also associated with fight or flight. So what basically this means is that when you're in a state of fight or flight, you're also, a connection falls away? Or am I taking this
when
too
you're in a
far in
state
the
of
wrong
flight or
direction?
flight, you're being controlled by the water energy. The water energy is what makes that decision. And
Mm-hmm.
it kind of depends. It absolutely can. It probably most commonly does. Sorry, I just need to grab a fidget thing. I'm trying to think of a situation where it wouldn't, because you know, people can react differently to different situations. At the exact moment that the fight or flight kicks in, yeah, I don't think you can feel. I don't think you can do fight or flight, like full on fight or flight, if you're feeling connected. And I'm just running through like every lecture I've ever been at on trauma, and also like practical training in dealing with people who are in shock post trauma.
I think that there are times where the shock you can be in a state of connection and experience a shock that outweighs, that is stronger than the connection.
What I think about is, so when I lived in Sderot, they brought an expert, like the world expert, in emotional first aid.
Sorry.
Which is like, how do you deal with people who have just experienced shock or trauma in order to give them the best possible odds of not developing PTSD. It's a whole system. It was developed in Israel with the support of the IDF, who they've been experimenting on for decades. And they have a system. And one of the steps in the system, I think in English it's called the 5 C's or the 6 C's. I don't remember how many. I know it's got a different number of steps in Hebrew and English because they were trying to make the mnemonic work. But one of the steps is connect. And one of the things you have to do with someone who has experienced fight or flight is connect to them. And so you try and get their name if you don't know it. You use their name. You hold their hand if that's something that you can do safely. You don't support them and you don't let them lean on you, but you can hold their hand. And it's something also that, that for people who answer the phone, like 911 first responders, they'll always ask the person's name. And if you ever listen to calls, they're going to use it. Alice, it's okay, Alice. I'm here with you, Alice. Alice, can you tell me how many people are in the car? Right? That's that connection. They're trying to reestablish the connection enough so that you are able to feel that they're actually there and supporting you, because that helps bring you back out of the fight or flight.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So what are the other things that pull you out of fight or flight while we're here? Well, let's do.
Yeah, let's 6 minutes left.
I actually want to do a whole episode on fight or flight. Yeah, I have what to say about fight or flight.
So I'll give you the number one thing not to do. Like I said, someone who's just had a shock, who's just had a trauma, you're there with them. And you tell that to them. You emphasize that. I'm here with you. I'm not leaving you. We're together. You never support them if they don't need it. If they are not physically injured, you don't help them get up and you don't help them walk. And you never do anything for them that they can do for themselves.
Is this also true with children? Because my intuition says, no, you pick up the children. If you're a parent and
you're picking up the children, then that's okay. But it's even better, again, if you give the child something to do. So one of the examples he gave, the expert, Dr. Falchi, is one time, just as a parent, not as a professional, anything, he was going on a field trip with his kid's class because he was one of the parents going along. And one of the kids got into an accident and sliced the tip of their finger off. They were outdoors. They were at a thing, and children. They were like 8, and so that kid was, bandaged up, taken in an ambulance, taken to the hospital, and then the other parents wanted to get all of the other kids and get them somewhere safe and talk to them about what happened. And Dr. Farsi, he took out all of his degrees And he was like, no, give me the kids. I am responsible for them. He told the kids, okay, a scary thing happened, and here's how we're going to help. We are going to form a grid, and we're going to search everywhere and find the finger. Maybe they'll be able to reattach it. And then, if we see anything else that's dangerous, that it might hurt someone if they touch it, we're going to mark it off and like label it or put a little, I don't remember what he did. And then parents got to take the kids away and have to talk about how scary it was. But he's like, you never go from a terrible thing happened, I was helpless to stop it, to I'm a tiny helpless thing who's being taken care of. You have to give them some kind of agency. And yeah, and again, with kids, it might be less of an issue. I don't know enough about the psychological research here. Kids who have stable homes are hopefully much less likely to suffer PTSD. And since this is specifically, like, this whole thing is about preventing PTSD and not, which is a very, very broad mental health thing, but it's not everything. It's I don't know if they're looking at things from a developmental perspective. But even with kids, giving them agency, giving them something to do, like when you have to take the kids into the bomb shelter, and one of them has responsible for snacks, and one of them responsible for making sure everyone gets in, or whatever. You have to give them something to do.
Right. Yes. You take the dog. You take the dog's leash. You take the lollipops. Let's go. Right.
All right. Well, maybe next time we can dive into fight or flight.
Yes, I think that would be good, because you know what I would actually like to do really is like be a little bit more specific and about fight or flight in our everyday relationships.
Because it happens.
Something I find is that, oh my gosh, working as a life coach, one of the first things you learn is that people get sent into fight or flight by their loved ones on the regular.
And then, if they don't even realize that's what's happening, that leads to the classic, after they were triggered or pushed into fight or flight, then the other person is mad at them, well, why didn't you just say that this was bothering you? And they're like,
right,
my brain was not functioning, but I don't have an explanation. I don't know what happened. Yes.
Right. Right. So let's do that next week. I think that would be very, very good. Okay, fantastic.
And take care, everyone.
So this was good. I'm very, very glad how today went. Now I'm going to go take a nap. Actually, no. Now I'm going to go get dinner.
Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you. I was requested after all of today. I was requested after the past bunch of days with all the wedding festivities, and then the wedding festivities that are coming up, because we're not done. We're all going away for the weekend. It's going to be this big thing. You know how it is. My children requested a light dinner, please.
Good luck with that.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. And so we'll see you next week, please God.
Same bad
time, same bad channel.
Cat. She's sitting right here staring at the screen. All right. Take care.
Fantastic.
Bye.
Okay. Thanks so much.